This is a powerful natural gas fruit that combines the abilities of explosive fruit, burnt fruit, smoke fruit, sickle fruit, poisonous fruit, and sparkling fruit. It also has various abilities such as flight, perception, and immunity to toxicity. It is a must-have for survival in the wilderness and extreme exploration. The protagonist Lannmode is lucky enough to eat the gas fruit and become a gas man. He embarks on an adventure from the East China Sea and forms a pirate group with the demon's son Nicole Robin, following the footsteps of the pirate king Gerda D. Roger's path unlocks the secrets of the main text of history keywords of the novel. Pirates Gas Fruit No Pop-Ups, Pirates Gas Fruit TXT Complete Collection Download, Pirates Gas Fruit Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Lannmode. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Lannmode. A sunny sea, with waves and waves dyed golden in the sunlight. The sky and sea breeze were gentle, and a few seagulls were constantly dancing up and down happily, occasionally diving into the sea to catch fish. The tide came and went, and a wooden bucket in the distant sea gradually drifted towards a vibrant and lush small island with the waves. As the wooden barrel drifted up the sandy white beach with the waves, it soon stopped on this small island. As if the balloon was bursting, a cork of the wooden barrel fell off the beach at some point, and a pale purple gas surged rapidly from inside. A large expanse of pale purple gas rapidly rolled up in the air like a dragon, gradually transforming into a humanoid form of pale purple gas. The figure was solid, but there was an 18-year-old man standing quietly on the beach, who was 1.8 meters tall and had a strong physique, white hair that was shoulder-length and lion-headed. He was wearing an old gray suit and boots. The sea breeze caressed the skin on his body, and Lannmode lifted his right hand to feel the coolness of the sea, laughing. After drifting for 3 days and 3 nights, I finally stopped at an island. I'm so hungry. Just as Maud finished speaking, his stomach twitched and his voice shook the sky and earth. A feeling of total weakness emerged, and he couldn't help but kneel on the beach, his right hand clasped on it. Suddenly, with a rustling sound, a green crab crawled out of the sand and quickly crawled towards the distant sea. Upon seeing Maud's figure, the speed was unexpected, and as he was about to dive into the nearby seawater, he slapped and pressed into the sand. Excitedly, Maud carried the green crab and headed towards the nearby wave-wood garbage dump. A pile of matches was piled up on the beach, with 8 green crabs on top. These were accidentally caught by Maud while picking up the sticks. It seems like we can have a big feast now. The original ecology of the One Piece world is everywhere in the world of the sea, and there is plenty of seafood. You can easily burst the barrel rhythm. Maud looked at the crab on the grill, smiled excitedly, and then lifted his right hand towards the pile of matches. After a while, a stick in his left hand quickly rubbed against the dry stick. A little spark ignited on the dry stick, and suddenly a big fire rose. The pile of matches suddenly caught fire, and the crab was perfectly roasting. Not long after, the 8 green crabs turned golden and oily. With both hands moving together, the delicious green crabs were solved. After Maud touched his stomach, he stood up and looked at the distant sea, his expression seemingly returning to his memory. His name is Lannmode. 2 years ago, he came to the One Piece world, but he was not in the East China Sea but a peripheral member of the new world of Domingo. Once, he participated in a secret mission. Originally, it was for the scientist Caesar to escort the trading of gas fruits. He had no idea about this, but when he saw the appearance of General Virgo from G5, he had the intention to investigate. After discovering that it was a gas fruit, facing such an excellent opportunity, God gave me the chance, and I must seize it. He ate the gas fruit in one gulp and then embarked on a desperate escape journey, all the way to the vicinity of the Goya Kingdom in the East China Sea. The bitterness along the way was a sad reminder. Although he possesses natural gas fruits, he lacks the ability to navigate and occasionally collides with extremely dangerous currents or encounters storms and currents. If it weren't for him being a gas man now, gas could easily enter bottles or barrels and drift with the waves. Otherwise, Lannmode would have died long ago. But drifting is not just about where you say you float. It's determined by the sea. He drifted with the waves and drifted all the way, occasionally missing shore for a few days in the sea, without a village or a shop, and without food. He thought he would starve to death, but unexpectedly, the natural gas fruit is not only a powerful demon fruit in the natural system, but also a demon fruit with extremely strong survival ability when there was no food and a sealed wine barrel. He quickly drew oxygen from the air for breathing. Seawater was not edible, so he drew water vapor from the air for replenishment. A person can live for about 7 days without food, but with water, they can live for more than a month. With this kind of survival ability, he is even more Robinson than Robinson, drifting with the ocean currents all the way. It doesn't matter if he can't reach an island in a few days, but in 10.5 days, he can always encounter an island in a month. Perhaps due to this strong survival ability, Maud thinks this sea is not a big deal. If I wave casually, I won't eat for half a month. I have plenty of steam, which I can't exhaust. So the lamentation began. Since crossing the Red Earth continent with the current in a wine barrel, he hasn't been able to dock for over a month. Finally, he stopped in a crevice in a reef in the sea. At that moment, he deeply felt the malice of this sea, lying like a salted fish on a reef the size of a person, ready to die. But he was lucky enough to be discovered by the seabirds, thinking it was a corpse. He sat up in shock from his dying illness and captured several seabirds to supplement his food and nutrition. From then on, Maud decided to go the way a normal person should go. I want to have a boat and learn professional navigation skills. I want to take a boat out to sea. Maud shouted with his hands wide open towards the sea, where the waves and wind kept blowing. Scream. Scream. The tide of the sea, which remains unchanged for a long time, shows no abnormal response. Only when there is an abnormality can it be seen. That's it, little island. Long time no see. I'm here. Borrow me a few pieces of wood to build a ship, ha ha ha. Maud turned around and looked at the dense green island forest, with both hands open, taking a deep breath and shouting excitedly. Maud rushed rapidly towards the dense forest in front of him, with several huge coconut tree trunks lying in front of him. However, Maud's eyes were wide open, and he quickly charged and collided with the tree trunks. A magical thing happened, as Maud collided in half and his middle body transformed into a pale purple gas, chasing after the half-disabled body in front. The body, lacking a trunk and still running, quickly recovered to its original state. Maud ran excitedly through the dense forest full of branches and vines. In no time, he, who was originally a normal person, ran away and transformed into scattered light purple gas. With only a few hands, 2 soles and half a head, he was connected by a faint purple gas in the middle and ran out of the dense forest. First whoosh. Maud stood in the open space of the forest, and the scattered gas behind him flew rapidly, rolling towards his incomplete body. In the blink of an eye, a normal human appeared on the open space. Maud shook hands. He was very normal, a normal person. Strange, the feeling of running so fast and scattering oneself is really strange. It feels like you can even hit a wall. At this moment, a white big goat stood quietly in front of the open space, eating the green grass one by one. After looking around, the goat let out a bleat and ran into the forest, disappearing without a trace. A bell rang. With the bell on, it's hard not to say that there are people on this island. Previously, I smelled a special animal odor from the air, and it turned out to be a goat. The ability of gas fruit can convert body elements into gas and release gas from any part of the body. The range of gas expansion is proportional to the strength of the person with the ability, and it can purify and compress the gas around the body and control a certain range of air. Therefore, within a certain range, Maud can detect and analyze a large amount of odors in the air, which is comparable to the odor discrimination ability of snakes. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Gas Fruit Development. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Gas Fruit Development. He is not sure what animal the corresponding odor corresponds to, but this is also a process that requires familiarity to immediately distinguish, such as the smell of snakes, which he is very familiar with. As soon as he thought of this, Maud turned his head and looked at the nearby grass. After a few steps, he could see an arm-thick hole appearing under a big tree. A wisp of smoke. Maud raised his hand, and a thin, pale purple gas rope quickly spread. After a while, it penetrated the snake hole. The next moment, the smoke rope heard a shaking sound, and his eyes lit up. He closed his eyes and felt it carefully. Although he couldn't see it, he could detect through the vibration of the air that the smoke rope had touched a large snake, which seemed to have been startled, but there was no response at the next moment. The smoke rope quickly bent and locked the snake's body. The smoke rope quickly flashed and pulled towards the outside of the hole. In the open space of the forest, Maud looked at the thick black snake with his own smoke rope hanging on his arm and couldn't help but be excited, but the smoke rope only locked half of its waist, so the big snake twisted and lightning bit Mabe, only to see a pale purple gas emerge in front of it. As soon as the big snake collided with the gas, it stopped moving. After the pale purple gas retreated from his body, Maud couldn't help but nod at this moment. The big snake on the ground remained motionless. Maud was satisfied and picked it up to prepare to take care of it. The gas was toxic, and biting him was like seeking death. Maud searched for food in the woods all the way, but unfortunately, there was no nutritious food on this island except for snakes, mice, and squirrels. Instead, the plants grew very well in the forest. Maud started barbecuing again, smoke rising like a dragon into the sky. Mosquitoes were everywhere around Maud while eating food, and various mosquito noises were annoying. From time to time, mosquitoes could be seen falling onto Maud's body, but they were poisoned to death. After touching his stomach, Maud said with an interesting expression, "It's still flat, I haven't had enough to eat." As expected, after 2 years of drifting, my stomach has changed a bit and my digestive ability has improved a lot. There wasn't enough food on the island, and Maud didn't waste his energy building ships because he didn't know how to do it recklessly. He also had to build on the basis of abundant resources. When he thought of this, he took a few quick steps, stepped on the ground, and jumped lightly onto the tree pole. Looking at the tree pole a few meters away, he jumped up and scanned the dense forest ahead. Maud quickly jumped forward on the pole. The devil's fruit is a treasure of great voyages, possessing various bizarre abilities, including Superman, animal, nature, and nature, which are very rare and rare fruit abilities. No matter how ordinary a person is, as long as they eat natural fruits and rely on their immune properties that cannot be touched by physical attacks, they can surpass the vast majority of people in the world and the first half of the Great Voyage. It is simply a step to the sky ability. What he ate was the natural gas fruit ability, which can be considered as the superior fruit of Smog's natural smoke fruit. The power of this natural fruit exceeds that of most demon fruits. In the ranking of demon fruits with strong abilities, natural gas fruits can also be ranked within the 20th place. It should be noted that the top-ranked and powerful demon fruits are all owned by famous flowers, and unless you want to get them, you can't even think about it. A strong person with powerful demonic fruit abilities, such as a naval general, a warring states marshal, a white beard, 100 beasts Kai duo, and so on. Which one is not a top-level strong person at the level of a 4th emperor general? So obtaining a rare and powerful demon fruit, Maud was still satisfied. After all, it is impossible to become a top-level powerhouse just by relying on a powerful demonic fruit. If there is such an idea, it is only underestimating the realm of those top-level powerhouses. However, even so, as soon as the gas fruit is consumed, it significantly improves various aspects of the body's physical fitness. The first point is that gas fruits can purify and compress the gas around the body, manipulate a certain range of air, so the subtle changes in the gas around Maud's body can be extremely perceptible. Not only can he perceive odors, air vibrations, and even faint changes in the air, greatly enhancing his perception ability. So far, he is not sure how strong the limit of this perception is. The second point is that the gas fruit greatly increased his speed. His gas-like body was incredibly light, and with the strengthening of his body powered by burning gas, the improvement was so simple that it became terrifying. The third point is power, which greatly enhances its strength and power by burning gas as a driving force. The fourth point is that oxygen pumping causes the body to be in an oxygen-rich state anytime and anywhere. After intense combat, the body will experience rapid breathing and huge consumption, which is to supplement oxygen, but also to some extent leads to a disruption of the combat rhythm. But in an oxygen-rich state, he can significantly lengthen his own health bar in disguise, maintain calm breathing during prolonged battles, and his physical condition far exceeds that of an ordinary person. That is to say, he, who was originally an ordinary person's physique, has become a genius warrior's Physique due to the influence of this fruit's ability. Due to his rich oxygen, the duration of his super state will gradually enlarge over time, making his body significantly improve even without exercise. If we were to deliberately train and cultivate again, it would be unimaginable to enhance our strength. This is also why Lannmode saw this fruit and ate it without hesitation, fully feeling the psychology of Blackbeard encountering the dark fruit. The comprehensive improvement in reaction, speed, strength, health bar, and human body has led to a significant increase in his combat effectiveness. This is not just a gas fruit, the use of natural energy gas. This natural demon fruit enhances human abilities in various aspects, making people become highly adaptable warriors to some extent. Such a fruit is prepared for the strong. It is a huge waste for Caesar to use the natural gas fruit's ability in scientific research. You should know that this fruit's ability can still fly. Devil fruits with flying ability are extremely rare in this world. The forest ahead was gradually thinning out, and Maud suddenly felt a strong wind blowing, with countless leaves dancing in the wind. With his eyes closed and his fruit ability fully utilized, he could perceive everything around him. Within a few meters, he could clearly feel any faint changes in the airflow, as the wind blew and leaves fell. The process was originally incredibly rapid, but with the fruit's ability, it was incredibly clear. As Mord rushed out and arrived in mid-air, he was delighted to encounter the presence of humans. Halfway up the mountain, he saw a small village person trembling in front of a group of fierce pirates in tattered clothes. Hurry up and hand over the food for this month. Do you want to be enemies with Lord Crick, the hegemon of the East China Sea? But we really don't have any food left. There's no food on this island, and we also catch some fish to make a living. It's already very difficult. There's no food left. Lying, since more than a dozen of you can live, it means there is food. Search, don't. Leaping onto a large tree pole next to a makeshift small village, Maud looked at a group of pirates about 2 meters tall, with sturdy bodies and wielding knives and guns. They were dressed in simple old suits, and the leader was draped in cloaks. The group consisted of nearly 20 people. On the other side, there was a group of elderly, weak, women, and children, with only 4 or 5 strong men holding spears and weapons, but they were very afraid. They were charged by the pirates and were about to rush into the small village. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Pirates of the Crick Pirates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Pirates of the Crick Pirates. The captain of the pirate team, who was the leader, looked at the others with a pistol and smiled. You guys are quite strong. Join our Crick pirates. Ha ha ha, take it away. A few men couldn't help but remain silent. The leader gritted his teeth and looked up. If we agree, can you not rob the village of food? We have just escaped from Nanhimo village and it has been very difficult here. Please don't rob our food anymore, otherwise the people here will not be able to survive. The fleeing refugees are so filthy, no wonder they look poor and have no oil or water at all. Forget it, you guys, come with us. The captain of the pirate group shook his head as he listened and looked at the dilapidated village bar. Suddenly, the sound of sheep came, and the captain of the pirate turned his head in surprise, holding a gun. He saw a goat appearing in the forest and grassland next to the village, happily eating grass. Looking at the fat sheep, he suddenly became excited. A sheep screamed and then 2 more came out from one side, curiously looking at the pirate and the villagers. The pirate captain was immediately excited and turned his head, holding a gun, to look at the man in charge holding a spear. He was nervous and scared out of cold sweat and trembling, and angrily said, surprisingly, there are more than 1 fat sheep. Damn it, how dare you lie to me and kill them? Behind the man, a villager roared with displeasure, this is our last grain, our only hope for survival. You cannot take it away. I am a pirate, and what I do is robbery. What I hate the most is that others dare to deceive me. I was originally kind enough to take you, but I didn't know how to kill you all, said the pirate captain with a wicked smile. At the next moment, a group of pirates carrying knives and guns shot out, shouting excitedly. As the villagers faced death in anger and helplessness, they fell from mid-air and saw a man with white hair and a suit standing between the 2 sides. Who are you, dare to provoke the Crick pirates? You're not going to die. Bang. The pirate captain was still talking, but saw a shot accurately hit Maud's chest. Seeing that the opponent did not move away, he couldn't help but disdain it. But the next moment, a faint purple gas rolled up from Maud's muzzle, and it returned to its original state shoe. But Moda's figure flashed in front of him, and he arrived in mid-air in front of Captain Pirate. He swung his leg like a whip and hit the opponent's head with a bang. A figure screamed in agony, flew backwards, and crashed to the ground with a loud bang. His face was deformed, and blood flowed from the corners of his mouth suddenly. Dozens of pirates, wielding swords and guns as if they were enemies, looked at Maud and couldn't believe it. "Let's go together, kill him." Suddenly, one person shouted loudly. In the next moment, more than 20 pirates held knives and guns and rushed towards Maud. More than 10 shots hit Maud, but strangely enough, although the muzzle appeared, no blood flowed out. "Monster, monster, what is this?" The shooter had a joyful expression and was so shocked that their chin was about to drop. They exclaimed in shock, but they were also pirates from the great pirate squad that roamed the East China Sea. They did not believe in ghosts or gods, but only believed in pirates who were stabbed in their hands. They were extremely brave. A dozen or so knives slashed towards Maud, only to see Maud standing motionless. The captain of several brave villagers exclaimed urgently upon seeing this, "Be careful. Let's go together." "No need, just watch from the sidelines. They can't hurt me." Just as the knife struck Maud, Maud calmly turned his back to them and said in the next moment, his body tilted slightly, and he punched a pirate in the chest, directly flying and hitting a group of pirates behind him. The blow scattered, and 4 or 5 pirates were knocked up and fell to the ground. At this moment, a long knife landed at Maud's feet, and he couldn't help but pick up the 4 or 5 knives that had been cut, and raised his hand to shake them. Boom. He saw 4 or 5 people's swords flying away directly, and in the open space, Maud quickly swung them close. More than a dozen blade lights flashed by, and after shouting in agony, he saw all the pirates on the ground seriously injured and falling to the ground. Maud looked at the slightly awakened pirate captain, pointed his knife in his hand, and shouted, "Take your people and get out of here. See you again next time. Don't try to survive." "Okay, I'll let go of this island." "Your Excellency, leave your name. The Creek pirates will avenge you." The pirate captain stood up shakily, despite his disastrous defeat, showing no disrespect to the crew of the East China Sea hegemon, Crick, with a solemn expression. "Lannmode, feel free to come to me if you have the ability, I'm always there." "Lann and Maud, little ones, let's go." Captain Pirate read out, deeply remembering the strange person in front of him. Not only was he skilled, but he also seemed to be fearless of knives and guns, an unheard-of monster. He summoned the miserable pirates and fled straight out of the island. Maud looked at the departing pirates and saw the long knife in his hand. He inserted it into his waist, which was more convenient with a handle. "Mr. Mord, thank you very much for saving our Xiaojiao village. I am truly grateful." The brave man in the village, facing the overwhelming battle just now, couldn't help but admire him and said gratefully as he approached. Just now, Maud also heard their conversation and looked at the simple and strange path of the ruined village. "Xiaojiao village, is this your newly built village?" The brave man holding the spear nodded and recounted, "Yes, we were originally villagers from Nanhimo village, but a year ago, our island and village were taken over by a group of monsters. Those monsters were like fish, with scales, and could speak human language. They considered themselves fishmen, claiming that higher races were coming to enslave us humans. They forced us to buy our own lives with money every month. Adults spend 100,000 yuan and children spend 50,000 yuan, and if we can't get the money, we will be killed. But a month ago, our village was robbed by the Red Basket pirates and cannot be handed over. We only built this village temporarily to save our lives. Does the Navy care?" Maud couldn't help but feel a bit strange. The Navy should handle this kind of thing. "We have contacted, but there has been no response. It is estimated that the naval forces of the 16 branches are afraid. I heard that Colonel Mouse is very greedy and cowardly," said the brave man bluntly. The man's name is Chi Gang, and as he recounted, Mode roughly understood their situation. It seemed that they had encountered the group of Ah Long pirates who had arrived in the East China Sea. Ah Long, this guy, was captured by the Yellow Ape on a great voyage and was saved by King Xia Kuei Shiping. When he arrived in the East China Sea, he harbored a desire for revenge against humanity. The island where Nami of the Straw Hat Pirates is located is their lair. These fish men have been rampant in the East China Sea for so many years, gradually expanding their territory. Nanhimo village is one of them. When I think of Nami, I can't help but think of this cute and quirky orange-haired girl from the Straw Hat Pirates. However, based on the current time, she is still a 15-year-old girl, too young, and even Maud feels embarrassed to take action. However, considering the tragic history of drifting in the past 2 years, which was even worse than Robinson's life, he was psychologically cast by the previous month's hunger sickness. He still learned navigation skills honestly, and with his sensitivity to the air, he was full of confidence. Since it is inevitable to find the thief cat Nami to learn navigation, it is also natural to defeat Ah Long. After a moment's thought, Maud smiled and said, "In a while, I will go and solve those fish people. After all, these fish people are legendary things, and I'm quite curious." Really, that would be great, but it's best for Maud to be on the safe side and recruit some bounty hunters to act together. Chi Gang was thrilled to hear this. After all, he was the first time he had seen a man who was not afraid of knives and guns in his life, and he was not an ordinary person at first sight. Excitedly, he advised him. Not long after, an elderly leader stood up as the village chief of Xiaojiao village. In gratitude for Maud's help, he specially squeezed some sheep's milk for Maud to drink. He ate seafood and drank sheep's milk, and Maud rested well all night. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Commercial ships in Xibuluo village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Commercial ships in Xibuluo village. The next morning, Maud looked at the dozen or so small fish grilled in front of the fire and couldn't help but be speechless. The island's resources were too scarce. In the words of the village chief and Qigong, most pirates would not come to this island because it was a waste of time. They deliberately chose such a broken island to avoid pirates, and they planned to make a living by raising sheep in the future. Mr. Mord is preparing to leave. Why do I still want to learn swordsmanship from Mord? Chi Gang, along with a few strong men, couldn't help but exclaim urgently upon hearing Mord's departure. There's no reason. As for swordsmanship, I can't teach it. I've never learned swordsmanship before, it's just that my perception and strength are stronger than ordinary people. Maud stood on the shore of the small island, speechless in his heart. He couldn't even get enough to eat on this broken island in a day. He didn't want to kill those sheep and destroy the hope of these villagers to survive, so he had to leave quickly. Moda has never really learned swordsmanship, he just relies on his perception of the air to see the gap and swing the knife. Due to his rapid and precise movements, he appears to be a skilled swordsman on the surface. Chi Gang looked at Moda standing on a small boat and couldn't help but smile. If you want to make money with Mr. Maud's skills, you can go to the Sharp Knife Bar on Curved Blade Island and try becoming a bounty hunter. Bounty hunter, that's a great idea. I'll go if there's a chance. If the fisherman solves it, you'll know it when you read the newspaper. Moda knew he still cared about the villagers of the original Nanha village and laughed. Please, goodbye. Maud stood on a small boat that was being ridden by one person, and couldn't help but sit down. He quickly waved his paddleboards with both hands in his hands. At the center of the boat was a small sail that was 2 people high. The people of Xiaojiao village thanked him for giving it to him and also informed him of the approximate direction of the route. The kingdom of Goya is known as the most beautiful country in the East China Sea, and the surrounding islands are also scattered, with a distance of no more than a day. This leads to ordinary people not having the money to buy big boats, and they usually sail on these small boats. Of course, these small boats are in calm waters like the East China Sea, which is also somewhat dangerous, but they are a common way of transportation. After leaving the small island and rowing for half an hour, he looked at the vast sea. Under the bright sunshine, Maud looked around in confusion and thought, southeast direction, it should be this direction. No, it should be that way. No, it should be this way. Maud took out the sketch that Seven had just drawn, with 2 or 3 star points constantly turning. As he reached a curved island, he looked left and right, feeling puzzled as if it was right from any direction. This seven-gang husband really has no common sense, and Mode couldn't help but stand up and gestured to the sun, laughing, up north and down south, left west and right east, that's it. I'm really a genius. With the mentality that no waves will die, Maud rowed towards the southeast direction with a happy expression as usual. So an hour passed, 2 hours, 5 hours passed, and as the afternoon sank westward, he still did not see an island. Maud stood angrily on the small boat, looking at the sea and shouting, "Don't play with me like this, the sea, you're all water." He clearly felt the deep malice of the sea. Looking at the wine barrel on the other end of the small boat, he relaxed his mood and survived the extreme drifting for over a month. It was just a day, what was he afraid of? But soon, the shadow of a large ship swayed in the sunset sun from a distance, gradually appearing. Is it a ship or a big ship? Help, help! Upon seeing the ship, Maud became excited and his hands moved rapidly like electric motors. The small sails of the small boat swayed wildly, but the ship flew rapidly towards the direction of the big boat. In less than 10 minutes, Maud approached the people on the big boat and saw him. "What kind of person are you?" shouted a man on the deck who seemed to be the captain of the escort, looking at Maud under the big ship whoosh. But when Mode stepped up directly from the small boat and jumped to the waist of the big boat, there was nowhere to hold him. The man from the captain of the guard cursed loudly, saying that if it weren't for him being alone, he would have drawn his sword. But seeing Maud parked in mid-air, suddenly his body slowly floated up, and soon he landed at the bow of the boat, laughing happily. "I'm so happy to see you. Where are you going? This ship is so big." As he jumped onto the deck, Maud excitedly looked around and said, the man was dressed in a delicate suit and cloak, with a knife and gun at his waist. Seeing that Maud had just jumped onto the big ship, he examined it carefully and said, "This is Lord Brewster's merchant ship. I am the captain of the escort team, Simmel. You'd better tell me your purpose, otherwise I don't mind getting you off the ship." "I got lost, take me on the way," said Maud happily. Upon hearing this, Smile roared angrily, "Lost? We'll be in West Brom village in half an hour, and we'll soon be able to see the island. Tell me about Lost, it's so suspicious." On the deck, more than 20 members of the escort team walked out together. Upon hearing the captain's angry expression, he couldn't help but hold his gun and look at Maud. In the rear cabin, there was a middle-aged man in a luxurious suit, holding a pipe and looking curiously. "I really need to dock now. I was planning to become a bounty hunter on Curved Blade Island, but it would be great to go to West Brom village." What a joke! No matter how Spire felt that Maud's words were weak and untrustworthy, Maud didn't care at all. Anyway, he got on the boat and couldn't be driven off. He was able to approach a small island right away, but he didn't know it's really dangerous to sail recklessly on the sea. It's a big merchant ship that can safely dock. After a heated argument, the uncle who was watching at the cabin door suddenly whispered a few words to a member of the escort team, and then the other party passed the message to Smanner. Smanner couldn't help but be surprised and looked at Maud with a slow expression, saying, "Mr. Brewster is generous and willing to take you to the dock in West Bromwich village, and provide you with 1 million Bailey's money to buy a good knife." "Thank you, good luck kid." Upon hearing this, Maud couldn't help but turn around and look at the uncle behind him. Seeing the other person nod, he couldn't help but laugh. "Your master really has vision and is truly a businessman, ha ha ha." "Are you saying that you are very strong? Your whole body is full of flaws, not like a swordsman. Let's try it out." Upon hearing this, Simmel heard that they only escorted tens of thousands of Baileys for a month. Although they provided food and accommodation throughout the journey, this man's master gave away 1 million Baileys at first sight, and he was somewhat dissatisfied. Sure, on the broad deck of the three-masted sailboat, Smanner, dressed in the uniform of the escort team, looked at Maud standing casually across from him and slowly drew his sword. The surrounding members of the escort team looked curiously at him. "I used to be an excellent bounty hunter, but I'm tired of the days of fighting and killing. When it comes to 13 swordsmaners in the East China Sea, no one doesn't know, you haven't even heard of my name, and when you look around, you're just an unknown young man who has just set out to sea." I'll teach you now, don't think you're invincible in the world. You need to know that there are people outside, and there are heavens outside. Spire confidently walked over with his knife in hand, his face calm and composed. The members of the guard looked at him with admiration and anticipation, as if he could defeat any enemy who dared to provoke. Upon hearing this, Maud curiously asked, 13 swords, even if you only know 13 moves, aren't you many? Upon hearing this confidently, Smanner almost slipped and fell onto the deck. He raised his knife and angrily pointed at Maud, saying, it's not 13 moves, it's 13 swords in an instant. My swordsmanship has already surpassed that of ordinary people. Swordsmen can use combo skills, but I am stronger than those people because I can swing 13 swords in an instant. Damn it, why should I explain this to you? How impressive. Unfortunately, you still can't beat me. Maud exclaimed in admiration. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Use your ultimate move. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Use your ultimate moves. Smanner was so angry that he didn't want to talk to Maud anymore. He suspected that this was Maud's psychological tactic, which was used to disrupt his emotions and find loopholes. Upon thinking about it, he felt that the person in front of him was really terrifying, and his eyes were serious as he looked at Maud Whoosh. After a few steps of sprinting, Spire came to Maud's body and slashed him down. With a thud, Maud casually lifted his sword to block him, looking at him with a strange expression. This was a moment of 13 swords, but for some reason you're still too tender, it's not over yet. With a loud shout, Smanner moved sideways and slashed away, then with a loud thud, he quickly transformed and continuously slashed out. Dang dang dang, on the deck, a captain of the guards surrounded a young man with white hair, constantly waving and chopping. One moved rapidly, while the other stood still in place with his right hand casually lifting the knife, showing Maud's unfathomable strength. What kind of person is this guy? He's so powerful, he easily blocks the captain's knife with every blow. Such a person has never been seen before. In the past, we also encountered a great pirate with a bounty of 5 million Bailey, who is such a terrifying figure. Even when facing the captain's sword, we have to avoid it. The members of the surrounding escort team were discussing, but as Simmel slashed, his sweat grew cold. He couldn't even determine the strength of the white-haired boy in front of him, as each blow seemed to strike steel. Use your ultimate move, a slow and calm voice rang out, with a loud bang. Suddenly, Smanner was slashed off and fell onto the deck, sliding back. Holding the knife in both hands, he couldn't help but tremble as he looked at Maud standing in place, his heart shaking. Watching Simon, who had been motionless for a long time, Maud flew over with his sword and aimed it at the opponent. Meanwhile, Maud was also carefully observing his way of wielding the sword. His level was now higher than the opponent's, and he was more likely to learn their swordsmanship. Dang 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 dang. The two people on the deck seemed to be engaged in a fierce battle, and the members of the escort team couldn't help but be shocked. Even Spire thought that the blow he had just made was an illusion, and now it was the opponent's true strength. Having no idea that Maud was secretly learning his swordsmanship, Smanner became more confident in the Vietnam War and suddenly said in his heart, it must be like this. The other party just burst out with a secret technique to increase their strength, and now they are entering a weak period. They are quite good at pretending. After performing a round of sword moves, Smanner retreated confidently and took a deep breath. He didn't intend to wait for the opponent to recover, but instead used a unique skill that had not been used for a long time. With one move, he defeated the opponent and made the master understand his true strength. Looking at Maud, who was running towards him with his sword in his hand, Smile let out a cold sigh as if he was the only one. He entered an extraordinary sword realm, his muscles twitched and his steps swung out. $13 shoe. In the blink of an eye, Maud's sharp perception revealed that the opponent's sword was like a speeding bullet, continuously swinging 13 swords. The continuous shadows showed that this swordsmanship was indeed impressive. I'll take your move. Maud smiled and waved his right hand rapidly. In a moment, there was a continuous collision of fast swords and swords on the deck, with sparks splashing all over. With a loud collision, Smile's eyes were shocked and his sword in his right hand was bounced out. A long sword stabbed away and stopped at his chest in an instant. Suddenly, Spire held the sword and froze. Impossible, all defenses are in place. Who the hell are you? Just call me Mod. Your 13 swords are pretty good, but unfortunately they lack any changes, otherwise they would be even more stunning. After a moment of contemplation, Mod withdrew his sword and commented with a smile. Smanner couldn't help but smirk bitterly, stating that his ability to instantly wield 13 swords was already the limit of his sword realm, and that adding changes to his swordsmanship was simply not allowed by his own strength. Mode smiled and didn't say much. It's no wonder the other party has been appointed as the captain of the escort team, as they still have some strength in the East China Sea. Suddenly, applause rang out, but the well-dressed smoking man walked out clapping his hands. Brewster took a puff of his cigarette and looked at Maud with a happy smile. Your strength is worth me sponsoring 1 million Bailey. Mr. Maud must have just gone out to sea, so it's convenient to have some money when you're out. Please accept it. Mode saw the money handed over by the other party's subordinates and couldn't help but accept it. It was indeed convenient to act with money, so he said straightforwardly, "Hee, the old man is really a businessman. I didn't take your money for nothing. What can I say? It's like this. Recently, people on the docks of West Brom village have been saying that they always see a pirate ship with a black cat skull flag hanging. They are the newly rising and famous pirate ships in the East China Sea in recent years, comparable to the Black Cat pirates of the Creek pirates. Their captain is a bounty of 16 million berries, known as the 100 stratagems of Crow." After speaking, Brewster couldn't help but look at Maud. Most people would feel scared and uneasy when they heard such a high reward, but seeing Maud's indifferent and happy expression, they couldn't help but exclaim that he was indeed a newcomer. But this great pirate, 100 Cloth, had already been killed by Colonel Monka from the 173rd branch of the Navy not long ago. Mr. Maud doesn't have to worry, but the remaining Black Cat pirates, as well as the hypnotist with a bounty of 9 million berry, praise it high. The bounty is 7 million berry and Sam, they are all extremely vicious beings, and I don't need your excellency to arrest them. All I need to do is show enough strength within a week to make the Black Cat pirates fear and stay away from West Brom village. Sure. Maud couldn't help but understand what was going on. It's just that Uncle Brewster in front of me is so wealthy and has something to do with the West Bromwich village. Is it difficult for him to have any connection with Miss Keya, the little friend of Usop, or other wealthy families on this island? The other party is a businessman, and as soon as they see a pirate ship near the village, they worry and want to invite experts to scare away the pirates, so that they can understand and not have any thoughts about the village. Uncle Brewster couldn't help but smile and sighed as he looked into the distance. If the legendary sharpshooter Jesus in our village were still alive, perhaps these pirates would have been driven away long ago. Upon seeing this, Smile said, "The master is still missing the sharpshooter, and Simmel really wants to compete with the other party. The legendary 100 shots and 100 hits make no pirate dare to invade the village. Jesus the sharpshooter, isn't this a member of the red-headed pirates, the father of Usop? It seems that the other party used to be very famous in this area. I originally wanted to inquire about the situation of the sharpshooter Jesus, but when I saw Brewster unwilling to say anything more and looking at him with a mysterious smile, Maud smiled but didn't ask much. This old man's confidentiality work is good." The small boat was being towed by a large one, and Maud followed the merchant ship for a short time before seeing a small island not far away full of beautiful scenery. At this moment, it was almost sunset, and the sunset fell into the sea, reflecting a beautiful red glow. Under the glow of the sunset, Xibuluo village appears extremely beautiful. The quiet and peaceful small village, with the chirping of birds returning home, and the people lighting the trees and docks, everything is so peaceful. Maud looked at the village, standing on the deck and looking out. He didn't need to do any other human affairs, just follow the merchant ship to dock and be responsible for safety precautions with Xibuluo. Guangzhou Mode noticed some seasoned men with swords and guns on the dock, watching from the side, and couldn't help but feel surprised upon seeing the situation. Xibuluo hugged his arm and smiled, explaining, "They are like you, all of whom have been financially supported by Lord Brewster before. For 6 or 7 years since I became the captain of a merchant ship, I have seen him almost every month and year, willing to spare no money to support those who have strength, spend money recklessly, but with the background of the Brewster family, this money is just a drop in the bucket. After sponsoring 1 million Bailey at once, you are the 9th in a few years. Mode couldn't help but understand that he thought his domineering aura was leaking from his side. He was used to emotions and looked ahead at the old man smoking and moving goods, laughing. Uncle Brewster is a smart person who has a bit of a brain for doing business on the sea. At this moment, several ships were also docked at the dock at sunset. Watching the sky gradually darken, lights were lit everywhere, and guards were on guard everywhere. Maud couldn't help but be speechless. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Attack of Black Cat Pirates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Attack of Black Cat Pirates. There are too many pirates on the sea, and business people are not afraid to dock openly, so they choose to do so in the evening when there are few people. At this moment, on another merchant ship, there was a middle-aged man dressed as a porter, with black hair and glasses, carrying a bag of goods from the ship. As he walked, he casually looked at the guards at the dock. A person behind him carrying a bag saw the situation and turned to remind him with a smile, "Crobatel, that's the big merchant ship of the Brewster family. The lineup is amazing, isn't it? The captain of their escort team is a very famous swordsman in the East China Sea, 13 swordsmen, a prominent figure. We are just ordinary porters. Don't look, let's go, that kind of person. If only I could work for Mr. Brewster too, it doesn't matter if I earn less money." Crabbell stroked his glasses, looking extremely envious. Don't think about it, they are extremely strict in recruiting people. Do you think you can easily board Lord Brewster's ship with just one person? That's right. As soon as Crobatel heard his companions carrying bags onto the dock was bustling with goods being unloaded and decorated with lights. Just when everyone thought everything was safe and sound, but in the distance, a large ship suddenly appeared on the sea surface, as if sailing from the night mist. A pirate flag was hanging on the flag, which was the flag of the Black Cat Skull Pirates. Pirates are here, not good, pirates are here. Suddenly, the person in charge of surveillance and investigation from somewhere noticed the arrival of the pirate ship and shouted loudly. For a moment, Maud saw numerous porters throwing goods and quickly running towards the island. The arrival of the pirates seemed like a disaster, and ordinary people panicked and ran for their lives. In the blink of an eye, the dock was empty, with scattered goods everywhere, leaving only their respective merchant ship escort teams and strong opponents. Upon seeing that the pirate ship was approaching, Simon quickly sent someone to take the master away from the dock and instructed, "Master Brewster, you go first. Maud and I are here to resist the pirates. Leave it to me, no problem." Mode couldn't help but smile confidently as he saw Uncle looking at him. "All right, Simmel, Maud, and you all be careful. I'll wait for you to come back safely." After speaking, Brewster's face was startled, but he remained calm and comforted a few times before fleeing with several members of the escort team towards the island. Smanner glanced at Maud and couldn't help but draw his sword. The others, as well as some warriors who had received the favor of the master, all took out their weapons and watched the pirate ship approach quietly. At this moment, on the pirate ship, the leader was the hypnotist Zhang. He held a hypnosis ring and looked at the members of the dock guard close in front of him through his red glasses. With a glance, he saw a black-haired man dressed in a porter's outfit, and couldn't help but close his eyes. "Little ones, kill all the enemies in front of you." Oh, with the command of Zhang, the sound of artillery bombardment kept going, and shells kept flying towards the dock and 3 or 4 merchant ships. A large number of explosions were heard, and among the guards at the dock, some were directly blown up in the explosion. Not long after, a scream came over, and Maud watched as a shell flew towards him. He drew his sword and quickly slashed it with a loud bang. The sound of an explosion rang out in front of him, and a wave of explosive energy rushed towards his face. Smanner looked at the guy next to him with some surprise. His strength was surprisingly strong, and he, feeling a bit guilty under the explosion, couldn't help but calm down. "The pirate is coming." After a series of chaotic explosions, the weak one was frightened and lost in his mind. Smanner raised his sword and shouted loudly kill. At the next moment, the crew members of the Black Cat pirate squad seemed like a tide, with a crazy face as they jumped off the pirate ship and charged towards the dock. The sound of gunfire was incessant, and they passed by under the guidance of the two cat brothers in Buchham, leaving no one invincible. Smanner and Maud exchanged a glance and rushed over, holding their swords together. The pirates they were blocking were constantly chopped to the ground one by one. As soon as the two approached, they saw Budgie and Sam, two sturdy muscular feline brothers, looking at each other. With their paws extended forward, they rushed towards the two and swung them out together like shells. Xibuluo attack, $13, 1 cut. Faced with such a fierce attack, Smanner and Maud swung a blow together, hitting each other with a loud bang. One person from each side was knocked away, and the remaining Sam, Cat and Maud looked at their opponents who had fallen to the ground. Sam looked at Maud with a fierce expression, looking naturally at him, and looked at the knife in his hand with a gap in it. He said strangely, "What kind of person are you? Why can you be more powerful with just 1 strike than him with 13 strikes? Isn't 13 strikes more powerful than 1 inch 1 to 13, don't you know? It's a question that even children know when they're 13 to 1, you're lying to me, then you may have made a mistake. Please recall how the math teacher taught you." "I don't have a math teacher, I have been self-learning since I was young." "I see." Just as Sam was being fooled by Maud, Maud stabbed him with a knife. Sam was still reciting which number was larger, 1 or 13. In a hurry, he raised his hand to block Maud's knife, which shocked him. "You lied to me, 13 to 1, you can't treat me like a child, you made a mistake and need to relearn. Mathematics is a profound knowledge, and when you are 1.13, it means you are wrong." Maud looked at the chubby Sam and gave a gentle warning, quickly swinging his right leg and hitting his chest. Boom. With a scream and a tragic cry, Sam flew backwards and smashed 4 or 5 pirates, falling to the ground. Sam, lying on the ground, had blood flowing from the corner of his mouth and stretched out his cat's paw, gazing at the sky in the darkness. Thinking of the difference between the previous 1 and 13, he shouted with reluctance, "Which is bigger, 1 or 13? I need to relearn mathematics. I'm still struggling with this question. Haven't I told you the answer? Being a pirate also requires culture." Maud held a knife and looked at the figure lying on the ground. In the midst of the sword light and shadow, his subordinates panicked and shouted to the captain, seemingly telling him that 13 is really bigger than 1. The hypnotist Zhang Gao held the hypnosis ring and looked at the scene just now, with an incredulous expression in his eyes. Even he began to doubt whether he had read it wrong. 13 is indeed larger than 1, which is without a doubt. That is to say, this man's 1 cut is more powerful than the guard's 13 cuts combined. Where did this strong person come from? "Captain, what should we do at this time?" Zhang Gao sought help from a black-haired man in the crowd who was bravely picking up a knife to resist pirates, as if the porter was fighting a bloody battle. Although this was their captain, he bravely resisted his subordinates, as if unable to win. He blinked and praised his life with some suspicion. However, as he looked at the white-haired boy Maud standing motionless across from him holding a knife, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. The other person's gaze was too calm, as if waiting for him to know what to do next. Zhang Gao felt a deep pressure when it was time for the performance. The hypnotic ring moved and hovered over the heads of Sam and Boogie, who were moving together, constantly shaking their voices as if hypnotic. They whispered softly, "Sambuchi, you two go crazy and verify with this young man which one is bigger than 13 inch." As soon as they finished speaking, Sam and Boogie, lying on the ground, suddenly had blood-red eyes, their muscles tense as if something was exploding wildly inside their bodies, unleashing their immense potential for killing and terrifying power. Sam and Butch shouted loudly, their ears cracking on the dock. They stood up together and looked at Maud holding a long sword. They shouted and shouted, "Tell me, which one is bigger than 1 or 13? If you don't tell me, I'll kill you, shoo." After speaking, the two of them rushed towards Maud frantically, their swollen muscles constantly tightening. Their eyes were bloodshot and they both rushed towards Maud. After each of them approached with a claw, they clapped together and shouted loudly, "Xibuluo's crazy attack," but in a moment, a figure with a knife jumped up from the ground, and with a loud bang, Maud kicked both of their heads apart. After landing, he looked at the seemingly painless and fearless cat people attacking together, his expression interesting after landing on the ground, facing the two of them's swift cat claws. Maudazzi let out a shout and swung his knife rapidly whirlwind blade. At this moment, Maud seemed to transform into a small spinning tornado in place, rapidly spinning and constantly throwing knives. The three of them fought fiercely, one hypnotized to a state of fearless madness, while the other was a swift sword. Countless blade lights flashed through the darkness of the night, and at some point, the bodies of Bougie Sam and his companions were slashed by a large amount of blade lights, with blood flying out and screams of agony. As the whirlwind stopped, Maud stood on the ground holding a knife and showed his figure. However, the cat people on both sides were covered in knife wounds and blood flew out. They all screamed and fell towards the ground. With a loud bang, both of the black cat pirates, who were offering a reward of 7 million Bailey, were defeated by Maud. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Miss Keya. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Miss Keya. This scene was watched by numerous pirates from the Black Cat pirate squad, with an extremely shocked expression. Even Zongao shook his hypnosis ring and looked towards the disguised captain. At this moment, Chloe seemed to be covered in blood, gasping for breath and frowning, but remained silent. Zongao gritted his teeth and saw the chaotic scene of the pirate attack that had already been achieved, which had met Captain Crow's requirements. He shouted loudly, "Retreat, Shu!" But at this moment, while Maud was holding his knife and waiting for his next opponent, the two fallen cats next to him suddenly jumped up and fled towards the pirate ship at such a fast speed that Maud was stunned. The hypnotic effect is so amazing that such a serious injury is nothing special. A large number of pirates who had just rushed in unison, accompanied by a rapid retreat with a high praise, panicked and rushed away. The pirates of the Black Cat pirate squad had all escaped at a speed superior to first class. In no time, Chi escaped onto the ship and drove away from the coast. Victory, victory, the pirate has escaped. The escort team on the dock was excited and cheered as they saw the pirate escape. Winning the Black Cat pirate squad gave them a great sense of achievement. They had just faced a life and death dilemma and were able to resolve it. The man who fought back the pirates with one enemy and two opponents was the white-haired boy standing there holding a knife. Strange, logically speaking, Chloe shouldn't have died. Just now, with just a slight move, the Black Cat pirates would have been destroyed. As the captain, by G. Chloe didn't appear, causing me to wait for nothing. Maud was surrounded by cheers, holding his knife with a hopeful expression mixed with disappointment. However, it seems that Uncle Brewster's request has been answered unexpectedly. Quickly in the evening, the soldiers of the war side won the battle, and Uncle Brewster and their ship owners all ran out. That night, a victory banquet was held, and Maud was even welcomed by Brewster to their castle as a guest. The next morning, in a huge castle hall in the village of West Brom, a white-haired Maud was eating breakfast in large gulps, with over a dozen dishes, various seafood, and meat, all of which were extremely abundant. But at this moment, in addition to the servants standing on the side, there was also a lovely young lady sitting across from her with shoulder-length light golden hair and a pure and soft temperament. She was holding utensils curiously and looking out, and it was Miss Keya. The entire hall is exquisitely decorated without appearing glamorous, with crystal chandeliers hanging on it, giving it a unique sense of luxury. There are no many exquisite decorations around, only some paintings and furniture hanging around, giving it a wealthy and luxurious appearance. Keya was stirring the soup spoon in the bowl, but she didn't feel in the mood to drink. She looked at Emoda, who had been eating all along, and opened her eyes curiously. "Mr. Maud, aren't you curious about what exactly happened outside? I heard that a person who was seriously injured last night collapsed in front of my house. Did pirates really attack our village? I heard that pirates are very scary. Are there many of them? What do they look like? Are there over 8,000 people? I am very curious." I was very curious. As soon as I heard this sentence, Maud coughed and patted his chest, looking at the young lady with a cute and sparkling expression, as if saying to tell me quickly. At first sight, everyone felt a bit nervous. Maud said in silence, "Cough, don't be like this, I really want to know." Usop once said that pirates are very powerful guys, and he has 8,000 subordinates. He has even defeated goldfish the size of an island, so powerful. Miss Keya said with pure eyes, looking forward to it, looking at this lovely and innocent young lady, who was Brewster's daughter. Maud's previous speculation was correct. The reason why I'm not curious is because it's my first time eating such delicious food. I'm really so happy. Uncle Brewster will take care of everything else, Mr. Maud knows how to eat, it's not fun at all. By the way, I'm curious why your stomach hasn't bloated yet after eating 11 dishes, and I'm already full after eating a small bowl, because I can eat. Do you have any objections? No. After sweeping the entire breakfast, Maud sat beautifully on the chair and couldn't help but burst into laughter as he looked at Miss Keya's displeased expression. Originally, there were quite a few people having breakfast, but just as they were about to eat, they heard someone lying outside and immediately stopped eating and walked out. Although Miss Keya was unhappy, she was still very curious about Maud because her father said he was a skilled swordsman, and even Uncle Smanner praised his swordsmanship, so he quickly looked at Maud curiously, hoping that he could show off his swordsmanship, and took Maud to the garden behind him. Miss Keya looked around and suddenly saw a rockery in the garden. Excitedly, she pointed at it and smiled happily. "Mr. Maud, can you cut open that stone with one sword? I heard from Usop that one of his subordinates was a swordsman, and with one sword, he cut an island in half, causing whales to swoop and turn into more than 10 sections, making a pitiful scream. You may not be as powerful as that swordsman, but at least you can chop a stone." "Damn it, Usopu, are you trying to trick me? You're making up stories like this. Do your family know what kind of supernatural image you've created for Miss Keya? I can't even imagine how powerful it is." Looking at the high rockery between the two, Miss Keya couldn't help but pull out her long sword from her waist. With a curious and expectant expression on her face, she seemed very excited. Without a word, Mode couldn't help but feel curious about his ability to cut open the stone in front of him. Just as he was about to prepare, he suddenly saw Keya beside him, and the way he hurriedly pushed people aside. "You stand aside, but later there will be a loud bang as the stone falls to the ground and blows you down." "Oh, I'm very curious, so excited." Miss Keya seemed scared and ran a few meters away, hiding behind a fruit tree. She stretched out half of her head and looked curiously with wide eyes, seemingly afraid to miss any details. "There's really no way to deal with this young lady." Maud saw flowers planted everywhere, making it a very beautiful garden. The vines wrapped around the fence, with flowers blooming and butterflies flying. Under the sun, it felt like a beautiful and unsightly environment. Maud gripped the knife with both hands, and the gas fruit increased his strength and speed response. At the same time, his body's original strength also became very strong. It's not a problem to break a stone with just one punch, but cutting a stone is still the first time. He has an idea in his mind about cutting a stone, which is similar to cutting a watermelon, but the knife in his hand cannot be sharp enough. So according to the theoretical formula of general relativity, energy is equal to the mass multiplied by the square of the speed of light. Obviously, in the case of constant quality, speed is extremely important. The higher the speed, the greater the energy, which is positively correlated. Therefore, he needs to cut open the stone and instantly convert all his strength into speed and concentrate it on the knife in his hand. The theory is reasonable, only experiments and verification are left. Maud held the knife and took a deep breath, slowly lifting it up. Behind him, Keya couldn't help but hold her mouth and didn't dare to make a sound. She opened her eyes and watched closely. "I didn't start burning gas as a power source, I just unleashed all my strength in my current state." A blade of light flashed by, and after the rockery in front of me shook, a wave of air blew around. The flowers and plants next to me swayed continuously in the strong wind, but in the blink of an eye, within a radius of several meters, a wave of air swept by. In an instant Maud held the knife in his hand, and the already dilapidated long sword quickly rotted into small fragments, falling to the ground like iron flowers. Maud's discarded knife, which was still in his days, turned into broken iron. A scream of surprise came from behind, and when he turned his head, he saw a weak figure with golden hair rushing towards him. His simple dress was dancing in the wind, extremely beautiful. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Keya and Usop. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Keya and Usop. Miss Keya ran to Mingdao's side and couldn't help but gasp for breath. Her eyes widened as she looked at the knife in Mingdao's hand, which was only left with a handle. She exclaimed excitedly, "How impressive! It's really amazing. Mr. Mord is really a powerful swordsman, so impressive. How did you do it? Are these broken iron pieces on the ground made by knives?" "I saw it with my own eyes, Mr. Mord. I'm curious about how you did it." "I'm curious, please Miss Keya, don't say that again. Your innocent eyes are on me, swordsman, they are very powerful beings. Powerful swordsmen can even cut open an island, and each swing of their sword unleashes the full strength of the swordsman's body. No, it is beyond the swordsman's own strength. This is willpower, it is spirit, it's very profound, but swordsmen are such magical and powerful beings. Do you understand? Mingdao plans to fool this big lady Keya. He deduces the sword-wielding theory and idealism from the theory of relativity. He finds that he is too his mother genius to explain. He doesn't believe himself. After closing his eyes and talking nonsense, he looks up and sees that big lady Keya is full of excitement in her innocent eyes. There was a sparkling sparkle, but Miss Keya clenched her two small fists as if trying her best to suppress her excited expression. What Usop said is true, so what he said has always been true. Mr. Mord, you are really a powerful swordsman, amazing. I also feel like I am. Mingdao rubbed her head and gave an awkward smile. She actually believed it. Oh my goodness, what else can I do? I said it wasn't to hurt her heart and make the lovely girl cry, but I couldn't do it. Miss Keya, with blonde hair, suddenly looked at Mingdao with a bright smile and said, Mr. Mord, can you give me this sword and the broken iron pieces on the ground? I'm sorry I went too far, but I really want it. At the end, Keya closed her eyes and spoke loudly. Mingdao was taken aback, nodded involuntarily, and handed him the hilt of the sword. However, Keya was so excited that she almost jumped up and was about to go pick up the broken iron pieces on the flower field. Wait a minute, I'll do it. Is there anything to pack? Is my scarf okay? It's also okay. Mord took a light yellow scarf, which had a hint of girlish fragrance on it. He spread it out in his left hand and couldn't help but squat down to pick up the broken iron pieces on the ground. Keya waited quietly beside him. After some effort, Mord picked up all the broken iron pieces and smiled. All right, here you are, but broken iron pieces can easily hurt your hands. It's best to put them in a box. Keya took it and smiled excitedly, with a bright and happy expression. Keya, where are you? Where are you? Come out quickly. But at this moment, a woman's voice came from the castle, seemingly anxious as she searched everywhere for her figure. Mom, I'm here, Mr. Mord. Thank you, I'm leaving. Keya shouted back and told Mord not to run back into the castle with the broken iron and sword handle, as if wanting to share her magical experience with someone. Mord quietly glanced at her distant back and couldn't help but laugh. When they returned to the castle, Brewster and others had already finished their medical work, and they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when they saw Mord appear from Smanner's mouth. It was learned that the man lying outside the castle was a person named Crabbell, who was injured in battle last night. His injuries were severe and he fainted. Brewster called for a doctor to treat him and tried his best to save him. At this moment, the injured person is lying at the door of the Keya family, not this guy Baiji Xibuluo. Judging from the attack by the Black Cat pirates yesterday evening, there were indeed too many coincidences. Only inevitability remained. Upon arriving at the entrance of the resting room where the injured were placed, I saw a man with black hair and a bare upper body on the bed, and an old doctor was helping him bandage. You really have 100 tricks, Chloe. You can't ignore this encounter. When he thought of the incredibly cute young lady Keya, who was lurking such a dangerous character around him in the future, Mord still felt a bit uneasy. He couldn't rely too much on the plot and let Luffy solve it in 3 years. It would be too late for an accident to occur with a bounty of 16 million Baileys worth of croquet. Maud looked at the man on the bed not far away and saw a huge sum of money in his eyes, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably. Returning to the hall again, Busrut and his wife approached, and the uncle sincerely said, "Mr. Mord, due to the attack by the Black Cat pirates on the village yesterday, the villagers were quite panicked. I hope you can stay in the village for a while, please." Maud smiled and said nonchalantly, "It's okay, but with time, I can only stay for 7 days. I promised someone something that needs to be dealt with. What matter, if I can help, I will try my best to provide help." Well, has Uncle Brewster ever heard of the fishermen? I met a dozen or so refugees who had fled before, and their homeland, South Hema village, was occupied and enslaved by the fishermen. As Maud recounted, Brewster couldn't help but realize that people in the East China Sea had heard of this matter to a greater or lesser extent, as long as they were engaged in business at sea. However, they were afraid of the fish man and didn't dare to get too close to it, so they kept their distance. Upon hearing that Maud was going to solve the fishmen, Uncle Brewster couldn't help but feel happy as he looked at Maud, adding a lot of goodwill. "I don't have much else, just more money than ordinary people. If you need it, feel free to mention it. I don't need this money anymore. 1 million belly is enough for me to make a living. If possible, can you teach me how to discern direction at sea?" "Ha ha ha, of course not a problem." After listening, Uncle Brewster suddenly thought of something and burst out laughing. The elegant blonde woman also secretly laughed, and the few people beside him couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as they looked at Maud. As a merchant trading near the kingdom of Goya in the East China Sea, Brewster also has most of the nautical charts in the East China Sea and has extensive sailing experience. Brewster couldn't help but be excited as he thought, when he suddenly saw that the knife on Maud's body was missing, and exclaimed in surprise, "By the way, the kingdom of Ujcote experienced war over a decade ago and has since been specialized in crafting weapons. I have some friends doing business there, and within a week, I will definitely have someone bring you a precious sword that's troublesome." Maud smiled as soon as he heard the knife and didn't refuse. Brewster, who was originally wary of Maud's lack of understanding, became even more enthusiastic when he heard about his experience. He quickly asked Smanner to take his letter and head to an old friend's house in the kingdom of Ujcote, bringing a precious sword. At the same time, everyone in the castle was nowhere to be seen. In the young lady's room, Keya was seen holding a box, excitedly waiting at the window, as if waiting for someone. It seemed like the agreed time had arrived, and a young man with a long nose crawled through the fence, secretly and quickly entered the garden. Along the way, he arrived at Keya's window, and when he saw her there, he quickly climbed up a nearby tree and sat on the tree pole. Usop confidently raised his right hand and pointed to his chest, smiling, "Oh, Keya, long time no see. Last night, I led 8,000 subordinates to just drive away the pirates who invaded the dock. They arrived a bit late." Upon hearing this, Keya immediately asked with concern, "No problem, have you been injured, Usop? Pirates are very dangerous." It's okay. As long as I raise my hand, there will be subordinates fighting to solve those miscellaneous fish. Didn't I tell you before that I have a very powerful swordsman under my command, who can cut open islands with just one blow and deal with the powerful existence of whales with a few blows?" "Has that legendary swordsman also arrived? He's so impressive. He also drove away the pirates with Mr. Maud. I really want to see that." "What, Mr. Mord, that, you mean the swordsman who wields the sword? Ha ha ha, he's not a very powerful character either." Usopu had no intelligence about Maud's involvement in last night's battle. He only heard that the pirates had attacked their village. He was particularly worried early in the morning and went to inquire about the situation. Only when he saw the pirates run away did he feel at ease and find Keya. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Learning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Learning. But he didn't expect Mr. Maud to be in the castle after the battle. Keya suddenly became happy and exchanged his intelligence, laughing, "No, Mr. Mord is very skilled. Do you know that? I just asked him to perform a rock-cutting performance for me in the garden, which is the rockery. Do you know that he really did it? With one cut, the flowers and plants almost blew up, and then even the knife shattered into pieces. It's really amazing, ha ha ha, it's really so powerful. Where is it? How could it be? Usop was so scared that he almost shrank and ran away, awkwardly laughing. Really, look at this box. The knives inside are all broken. I've really seen it with my own eyes, Usop. Let me see. No, it's impossible, really. Usop looked up at the box opened by Keya and saw the handle and broken blades inside. He couldn't believe it, but Keya began to speak in unison and tell him the story of Maud slaying the stone. Keya has been listening to Usop tell her legendary story, and now it's her turn to have a story that makes her very happy and excited. The two of them were just casually telling stories, as if Maud didn't want to be cute and innocent and sad, and so was Usop. He happily included Maud in his story collection as much as possible and became a member of his 8,000 subordinates because his subordinates are all too powerful. They are all powerful beings who cleave islands and slay monsters. A swordsman who slays stones can only be a junior. Usop chatted with Keya for nearly an hour, and when he saw her tired, he quickly got down the tree and ran into the garden. Then he came to the rockery. When he saw the intact rockery, he couldn't help but twitch his nose, feeling that Keya would also deceive. But with a fierce gaze, he suddenly noticed something and ran a few steps closer, touching a straight gap in the middle of the rockery. Looking up and down, Usop couldn't help but take a cold breath. He looked at the 2-meter-high rockery in front of him and couldn't help but take a few steps back in fear. Only when he saw it from side to side could he feel at ease and patted his chest. It's just cutting open a stone, what's the big deal, ha ha ha. On the big tree next to him, Maud sat there holding an apple and couldn't help but find it amusing to watch the embarrassed laughter of a guy with a long nose in front of the rockery. Although Usop often lies now, most of his future has been realized. The lies that have been realized are true, not lies, and Usop will still be quite skilled as a sniper. In the future, after Usop left, Maud couldn't help but look up at the castle, staring straight at the quiet room where Chloe was, and then went to a study in the castle. Uncle Brewster arranged for a butler to explain his sailing experience to him in a study room. An elderly butler skillfully took out a stack of books from the bookshelf, carefully holding them high and placing them on the table. Originally, knowledge of navigation required a long time to learn, but only 7 days. Learning how to recognize directions is still sufficient. These books are all about navigation knowledge, and I will find the direction recognition for Mr. Maud. Cough cough. The old butler was wearing white gloves while flipping through a book, carefully checking it, and then opened it in front of Maud. Suddenly thinking of something, looking at Maud's worn-out suit, he cautiously asked, Mr. Maud, can you read? I'm sorry, I'm just confirming your level of knowledge. You should know that most ordinary people only recognize some commonly used words, and they often recognize them through newspapers. This level of knowledge is far from enough to learn profound maritime knowledge. No problem, leave it to me to understand. Maud didn't blame or laugh. The old butler nodded and handed it to Mo de Shu. He then watched him quietly examine the content of the direction of navigation knowledge. Seeing this, he couldn't help but look for other books about the direction of identification. Maud only roughly understood how the world distinguishes directions at first glance. If you want to find a direction, you need to find constant and unchanging things, such as the sun, stars, moon, as well as easily recognizable objects such as a compass, watch, and your own hand. These are all things that can quickly and skillfully identify direction. But more advanced, it can also recognize direction based on changes in ocean currents and trees on islands, and more miraculously, on animals. At the sight of using seabirds to distinguish directions, Maud couldn't help but be taken aback. It was the first time he had heard of it, and he even discovered that using his sense of smell to distinguish directions was unbelievable. People tried many methods to accurately find directions on the sea. Maud no longer wants to run around in the sea for hours and days, and can't help but take it very seriously. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Uncle Brewster couldn't help but stare at his pipe. He nodded to the old butler, who looked up and closed the door, leaving. The old butler was also surprised as he watched Maud study on his own. Due to the fact that too many ordinary people read newspapers and recognize characters, he still has a good impression of people who can read maritime knowledge, so the old butler became even more attentive, and Maud did not refuse. He spent 3 consecutive days in the study, and sometimes Miss Keya even came to curiously watch him, hoping that he could show more strength. For example, it could be like an ordinary swordsman under Usop, who could cut off a house with one sword and easily wield it without damaging it. However, Keya hopes that Maud will also demonstrate such strong strength, because Mr. Maud is not ordinary. Upon hearing this, Maud couldn't help but feel a pang of pain. Most likely, Usop saw the marks on the rockery and began to weave ordinary swordsmen, each of whom was more powerful than Maud. This Usopu is really a pit. Maud can only say that the Keya family is very important. If it is destroyed, no one can live there. Miss Keya finally stopped it, and the thought of it made her feel scared. Usop and Keya were telling each other about the magic of swordsmen, but Uncle Brewster didn't pay much attention to this matter and was unexpectedly enlightened. But in 3 days, it was enough time for Chloe, who pretended to be seriously injured, to recover. During lunch, Maud was playing with a spoon and quietly scrutinizing the guy in front of him who claimed to be Crabbell. His hairstyle was shoulder length and he wore glasses. Looking very gentle, Clabbetal looked up and said with a natural expression, "Mr. Maud, he is very curious about me, but I am just a small porter. Fortunately, I was saved by the master's treatment, and Crabbell only hopes to work by the master's side to repay this kindness." Uncle Brewster laughed heartily upon hearing this. "What kind of kindness is ungrateful? You risked your life to fight and help us escape the pirates. You are the benefactor of our village. If you want to stay, you can also do it, but you will be wrong to become an intern butler." "Oh, this is still a grievance." Maud looked at Chloe and arranged the other person very well as soon as Brewster spoke. He was afraid that once the old butler left, this guy would directly take over as the butler. However, this is also Chloe's appearance of a very knowledgeable young man in a generally illiterate environment of ordinary people. As long as they can be trusted, Chloe's condition is to choose a good butler. Maud looked at Chloe and suddenly smiled, suggesting, "Uncle Brewster, I think everything needs to go through a process. Mr. Crabbell just recovered from his illness and needs more rest. How about this? Let Mr. Crabbell and I get to know each other in West Brom Village these days." Brewster readily agreed to Maud's suggestion halfway through. "Maud, you don't need to learn how to distinguish directions on the sea anymore, but why don't you go out together to relax when you have time?" "I was just about to get to know Mr. Maud well. It's an honor for Clabbetal to make friends with a skilled swordsman. Please advise me a lot." After listening, Chloe glanced at Maud and stood up with an extremely calm expression. After finishing his routine, he stroked his glasses. Maud smiled and said, "Ha ha ha, so am I." Keya's family didn't think much of it. They seemed to think that getting to know Maud and Crabbell was a good thing, but they didn't think much about it. As for Keya, they didn't care about these things at all. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Mingdao Chaolu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Mingdao Chaolu. After lunch, Maud walked out of the castle with his injured Clabbetal and wandered around the village of West Brom. Halfway down the road, under the bright sunshine, there were occasional big trees growing on the roadside, with the scenery of birds singing and flowers fragrant. Before Maud could even leave, Clabbetal looked around with a satisfied smile and calmly said, "It is truly a peaceful village, truly beautiful. Those who can live in such a village must be very happy." Maud was somewhat surprised and smiled. "Do you really hope to live in such a village for the rest of your life?" "Of course, if I could live in such a village for a lifetime, it would be something I would never have wanted in my life." "Oh, what I mean is that I really hope to live in such a village." Chloe smiled sincerely upon hearing his expression, and of course, this was also his true thoughts in his heart, and he didn't lie at all. Pursuing a better life is not wrong, but some people are accustomed to fighting and killing, and their nature cannot be changed. "Mr. Maud, are you referring to me, or Mr. Spire?" Chloe asked tentatively without realizing it for a moment. "You are the same. You should know that when killing becomes an instinctive habit, even a beautiful and peaceful life is a temporary illusion for him, just like Mr. Brewster, who loves to smoke and never leaves his hand." He. Mr. Maud is joking." Mr. Brewster, smoking is not a bad thing, you know there are many people who love smoking. As for the habit of killing, I believe we don't have such people around us, and so does Mr. Smile." Upon hearing this, Maud turned to look at Chloe and chuckled, "Is that right, but Miss Keya has already been somewhat injured by the smoke, but she gasps for breath after a short jog. I asked the old butler, and Miss Keya has been sick almost every year in the past few years. Her physical condition is already a bit weak and dangerous, let alone someone who is prone to murder." A killing intent flashed deep in Chloe's eyes, and his identity was suspected, which was unlikely, but he was certain that the man in front of him did indeed suspect him. The intuition of running for life for years told him that the man in front of him might already know his true identity. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but laugh. "Really? I will truthfully report to the master. I believe the master will definitely quit smoking for the sake of the young lady. Smoking can be quit, and similarly, if you become a murderer, you can also quit. Everyone hopes for a peaceful and happy life. After all, the guy who destroys the happiness of others is very annoying and a bad person." Maud looked at Chloe and smiled naturally. "Haha, Crabbell is really good at joking. As the saying goes, if you put down the butcher's knife and become a saint on the spot, the master will quit smoking for your lovely daughter. So, who would that guy who has always loved killing people be willing to quit killing for? Unable to give up such hidden killing power, it will only accumulate deeper and deeper, and ultimately cannot escape the Navy's search. Some things cannot be quit, so we can only keep repeating them. As long as we live, we can have everything, and the Navy is not an omnipotent existence." Chloe listened and looked at Maud without any intention of giving in. He had already planned to kill the man in front of him. No one can stop his plan, anyone in front of him will die, and the hidden killing intent is immediately put aside. The killing machine has started. It's great. I'll wait for you to come find me to take action. I'll play with you well in the next few days." Both of them didn't express themselves, but obviously they both understood each other's thoughts. Chloe's heart is very firm in killing Maud in the afternoon. Maud, who was still studying navigation in the study, suddenly heard a knock on the door. Uncle Brewster, dressed in a sophisticated suit, walked in and noticed that he couldn't help but bring a stool. He sat down and habitually wanted to smoke a pipe, but couldn't help but put down his hand. "Is Kaya's illness really related to my smoking? I haven't even noticed that I've been hurting my beloved daughter." Brewster spoke of Kaya's sweet and lovely image on his own, as if she had been the apple of her hand from childhood to adulthood. He had always been afraid of any harm to her, so he felt a bit guilty about the impact of smoking on Keya. After talking about a lot of things, looking at Maud eagerly, Maud put down his pen and looked up straight. "I am very sensitive to the air. The smoke content in the air has been increasing since you entered the castle, even in Kaya's room. This should be why you occasionally visit your daughter's room." After listening for a moment, Brewster exclaimed in admiration, "That's right, you can also know. You're really amazing, Mr. Maud. You're really a magical person. Miss Keya has always lived in a castle since she was young. Lack of exercise and insufficient castle lighting have led to some weakness in her body. This is partly because you and your wife take too much care of Miss Keya and are afraid that she will be harmed outside." Looking at Brewster, who didn't object, Maud continued, "If it's an ordinary family, their children are stronger and healthier. Their house is not big, and if you open the window a little, the smoke will quickly dissipate. However, this castle is different, and the flow of smoke is not good, which leads to the accumulation of smoke. So, it can be understood that Miss Keya, despite her weak physical condition, is constantly affected by smoke and falls ill every year." "I see, thank you, Lord Maud." Brewster looked up and couldn't help but agree with a smile. He was very convinced by the explanation and didn't know how to be grateful as he watched Maud suddenly thinking of something. He smiled and said, "Smanner has received news that he has found a precious sword, which has always been collected by business friends. I believe you will definitely like it, Mr. Maud. You are a good person." Cough, suddenly being stuck by the good guy. Maud looked at Brewster, who was much more relaxed, and couldn't help but be speechless. "I'm a man who wants to become the pirate king." No, that sounds so strange. "I'm a pirate." 4 days later, with the sincere help of his uncle and the help of the old butler in identifying directions on the sea, Maud learned a lot in identifying directions. In addition to simple methods, he even learned some directions based on profound astrological knowledge. For 7 days, there were no pirate groups to harass the entire village of West Brom, and the whole village fell into peace, as if that night was an unexpected interlude, but secretly, Maud formed a never-ending opposition with the CLO disguised as Crab Bell. Both sides were waiting for an opportunity, and on the 7th day, Smanna hurriedly ran back to the castle, dusty and carrying a long knife wrapped in cloth bags. In the garden, Uncle Brewster, Simmel, and a few guards stood quietly by the side. In the castle, Miss Keya, who looked curious, was stopped by her mother from watching these dangerous things. In the living room, the intern butler Chloe habitually stroked his glasses and sneered. At this moment, Maud, with a head of white hair, slowly untied the cloth bag in his hand. Then he saw a black scabbard, a black hilt, and an exquisite appearance that made him realize that it was not a simple treasure sword. This precious sword is called Chaolu, which means the first clear drop of dew formed in the early morning after the night has passed. It was a sword worn by a leader of a guard regiment in the kingdom of Ojkote more than a decade ago. However, after the war, it was lost to the master's friends and has since been collected, but it has not been sold. This time I also heard the old master pleading with you and your story. That's why the other party is willing to take out the knife. Simon Eyre couldn't help but envy Emoda's grip on the precious sword. Although it was not a good and fast sword with 50 skills, the quality was the same, and it was also a rare and famous sword. However, with his strength, holding such a sword may directly lead to being robbed. Pirates and bounty hunters are very sharp-eyed individuals who come to grab good things. Without strength, they cannot defend themselves. End of this chapter.